Hey guys, Francis here. I'm about to hop on a property management call with a client that has a portfolio of real estate and owns a brokerage, a real estate brokerage, but is looking to actually transition and start managing his own real estate assets so that he has ultimate control for his asset base, managing the property management aspects of his assets, and then create a stream of income because now you have a separate company formed, vertical integration, you have a separate company formed to make that company profitable by managing third-party real estate. So stand by, let's see how this call goes. Oh, it's good to hear from you, man. You know, it's been, when did I speak on the podcast? I think, I wrote a book on real estate, right? Job plus real estate equals wealth, yeah. There was a guy in New Hampshire who was an investor that I actually helped build up his portfolio of real estate. And he's an author. He's authored several books. And he's been on me to write a second book. And I'm going back 5 years. He's always been like, Francis, we got to write a book on real estate, co-host it and write it. So he called me up probably a week into this and said, Francis, if you say no to this, then we may as well scrap the idea because we're never going to do it. He's like, we should do a book. Like once a week, let's get on a call and just, we'll record the call and we'll create our book. And so sure enough, we did that. And I'll tell you, Dave, we're done with our recordings. We're not done with the book, but we're done with the recordings. So, we're going to go into phase 2. So it'll probably be a year until the book comes out. So it's actually, the name of the book is, I'll reveal it on, early. It's called Don't Quit Your Day Job. So it's sort of a spin off of the Job plus Real Estate equals wealth. But it's more geared into what you're going to face in your day-to-day activities as you get into real estate. It's that unwritten, like what people don't talk about. Like they talk about the profits, they talk about cap rates, but this is talking about stuff that you don't really know, like people don't always talk about. Sort of what's going to happen on this call, property management, right? No one talks about, well, who's going to actually manage the asset, And if you're going to manage it yourself, what kind of things do you need to think about? But I will say, sort of at a very, very high level, I will say that the reason I love property management is that once you, this is going to sound sort of deceptive and it's not intended to, but when you run property management, you control all the other facets of what goes on in that investment and with the owner. So I got, when I managed the property, within X amount of months, I would have the owners, obviously build up the trust with me and want to say, hey, Francis, I want to build up my portfolio. Can you represent me on the buy side of, more buildings? And flip-wise, when they want to sell or thin out their portfolio, it was an automatic understanding that I would get the listing. So from a marketing standpoint, for my brokerage activities, it was almost non-existent. I didn't really even need to focus on that. The mothership was property management. If I did a good enough job on property management, all the other business just trickled in. That's really where the beauty was, right? Now, our arms was brokerage. I actually didn't conduct the brokerage in-house. I subbed the brokerage out, but I focused on the referral commissions coming in. Right, just because I didn't want to really thin myself in my mind on, selling. And also for me at the time, I thought there was a little bit of a conflict of interest, which really there isn't, but I wanted to be focused 100% on the management side of it. But the other arms was, we had a mini construction company within the management company that did all the rehabs, that did all the capital projects, right? And so it's an automatic, you're controlling that. You're getting the bids. You're automatically getting that work. So the most profitable entities was the construction management, right? Which is basically all the rehab work, the unit turns, and then the routine maintenance, right? And we can dig into how I had those all structured, right? The second most profitable was the leasing arm, right? So every time I leased a unit, there was a fee that was paid, right? And then the property management was basically a percentage of the way I did it was a percentage of your gross collected income. And that was my steady sort of stream of income, which had a break-even point, and we can talk about where that break-even point is from a unit's perspective. But that was more, I kind of viewed that as my, that pays the bills, right, and it keeps my company afloat. It's a recurring stream of income, and it's a dependable stream of income. So it's always going to come. It's just on a recurring basis. The other two, the leasing and the construction, was more on a up and down, feast or famine. But depending on the number of units you had, you'll be shocked. Like property management is one of those, and I'm one of those. When I opened up my second office in the Seacoast in New Hampshire, I literally remember I rented space. And I asked the building owner, it was one of these massive mill buildings, and I asked the building maintenance person, I said, hey, can I get access to your storage basement? And he said, that's a weird question, Francis. Why would you want access to our storage basement? I said, because I can imagine with a massive mill building like this, and where you guys are renting small offices, there must be a ton of furniture down there that you want to get rid of. Right? And I don't want to go out and buy brand new furniture. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and dust off that dirty furniture as long as you're okay with me having it. And I'm going to move it up to my office. What I'm trying to say is that I'm a roll up your sleeves, build it from, minimum and ramp up as necessary. So property management, the only real expense that you're going to have, which will be a recurring expense, is your software. Okay, so I went through 3 iterations of a software. I started off with Tenant Pro, which is no longer in existence, right? Tenant Pro was, just to go back to date myself, 2005, 2006, where it was loaded on a server in the office, and when you did, do a bank reconciliation, and you hit the button to do a bank reconciliation, you see the spinning wheel for half a day as it's reconciling the bank registers, right? So, because it was communicating with your internal server. Then, the whole cloud-based service came along. We moved to a product called Rent Manager, which I really liked, and they're still in existence today, right? And I would highly recommend them as well, Rent Manager. The third iteration, and this is just before I sold the management company, the third iteration was I went through a full automation initiative, which I would recommend. Let's make sure we have a side conversation about automation. But I went through a full automation initiative just to clean up the office, because I started the business in 2006. Around the 2017-18 mark, I said, yeah, you know what? We've been in existence for 11 years, and I don't feel like, outside of that software change, I feel like we're getting a little clunky, as far as, Excel spreadsheets, and I feel like we've got some old systems that I got to refreshen. And we went through an automation. I actually hired an automation expert, came in and basically automated all the simple, mundane tasks that we were doing and made it automated, and I actually eliminated a bunch of positions by doing that. And as part of that, we moved from Rent Manager into a product called AppFolio. So automation, I just want to hit this before I forget this, right? One thing I would do, and I consult with a lot of people. Actually, I have someone who I'm building a property management company here in Buffalo with your exact scenario. Except he's not a broker. He's a property owner he's sort of like my story back in the day. He owns 60 units of him by himself, and he's not satisfied with property management here, the local offerings. And he says he's actually an engineer by background as well. So he's hired me to help him build a management company from scratch, but he wants it to be minimal time involvement, from his standpoint, just because he doesn't want to really focus too much on it, but he wants to build vertical integration. Yeah, in regards to automation, so I look at, when I built my business, right, it was 2006, we had whatever automation was available at the time, right? It's amazing how quick technology moves. But, things like spreadsheets and, conference calls, and those were the things of the early 2000s, right? Now a lot of it is DocuSign, making sure that when you do lease signings, you're doing everything, on, you send a management agreement, it's all on your phone, you send it, your recipient is probably reading it online, as opposed to 2006, where we would schedule a meeting to sign a management contract. They would physically come into my office. I would sit there and go over my management contract with them. They'd redline the management contract, ask a bunch of questions. It goes to my attorney, it goes to their attorney. Oh my God, 3 weeks later, I'm closing the transaction, right? So my time to close was so much longer, and I was like, oh my God, why am I even doing this? But it's all on the inherent design, right? So if you design it with the right mindset right from the get-go, saying, this is my current lifestyle. I have kids, I'm married, I'm very involved in my kids' sports, but I'm also, from a professional standpoint, I'm also involved in real estate, and I'm meeting potential sellers, buyers, and I get the question of, hey, David, do you manage property, right? I don't want to say, oh yeah, I do. Why don't we meet at a coffee shop? Like, you want to be able to have that automation up and ready, where you can just say, you know what, let me review the building. Here's, whatever your process is, and we can develop that process. And you send over the management contract. It comes to them on their phone. They DocuSign, or a version of DocuSign, accept it, comes into you. And then what are the next steps you're going to do? Right? So everything has to be process driven. But I had a niche. My niche was out-of-state owners that own investment real estate in Manchester that wanted the building operationally managed. And it's important to know, operationally, as opposed to, hey, manage my reserve budget, run my building like an HOA. That wasn't my game. My game was, you want to run an operationally sound building where money comes in, I do the best job on the operations side, and then the net NOI, net proceeds, boom, gets sent to you at the end of the month. Really quick, really swift, transactional, right? But recurring transactional. Yeah, so the difference with HOA is you're managing the reserves, right? So I'm walking the community, and I'm saying, hey, it looks like in 3 years, based on the life expectancy of this roof, when this roof was replaced, based on weather conditions, based on an engineering analysis, this roof is going to fail in the 3-year mark. Based on that, we need to start building up your capital reserves so that we can do that enhancement, that capital project, right? There's a lot of planning, there's a lot of funding, there's a lot of sitting down with people and managing it. I didn't do that. That wasn't my game. My game was a component fails, it's replaced. And my job was to facilitate the most cost-effective solution for that. And I made a delta margin on that. And my clients knew that. And they had the option to say, if you owned the property and I was managing it, you had the option to say, you know what, Francis, I'm not going to use you because you have a 20% margin on all your maintenance. All right, Dave, go ahead. Go ahead and fly down from Utah, fly down to Manchester or Boston, get a rental car, drive up to Manchester, go to the Home Depot, pick it up and deliver it and install it yourself. Right? I mean, it sounds obnoxious, but that was my approach, right? I was operationally, that's the offering I gave, and people appreciated that because they didn't want all that other stuff. Their model was, listen, I'll manage my own capital reserves, I'll manage my own savings, I'll do all that. If my roof needs to be replaced, I'll fund it for you, right? Just get me the best roof. If you can't figure all that, if those aren't in this nice little holistic system, something is going to give. Either your brain's going to go, your family's going, yeah. So I would say, I mean, as goofy as this sounds, it's almost like you have to crawl into like a dark room, right? With yourself and only yourself, and you sit there like freaking Buddha and you say, give me, universe, give me, what am I supposed to do? Like, I've got all these things. I want to be a real estate investor and I want to build up a portfolio. I want to continue the apartment investing journey because that gives me access to the right people with the right, like you just said, the smart people. I want to continue conducting real estate because that's my bread and butter right now. I want to still have time with my kids and their sports. So, and then you emerge out of that, whether it's 2 days, 1 day, 3 days, whatever it is, right? And you emerge with a clearly implementable, realistic plan. Honestly, that's going to be I think that's the biggest success point for you. But if it's not done right, I think that's almost the biggest failure point too. And I would spend time developing what those are. Like if it's property management, okay, what are the systems of property management? Because if you, and you go through the common things. So what happens in property management? Someone says, hey Dave, I want to hire you. If you're sitting at that point trying to figure out, oh shit, how do I engage this guy? Like, how do I give him a management contract? Okay, I'll get an attorney to draw it up. Okay, so then how do I engage his building? Do I walk his building? Do I meet each and every one of his tenants? How do I get their rent roll? Then how do I add it onto my software? What if they call and there's a maintenance issue? Like, you have to sit in that dark room and figure actually, you don't have to figure that out in the dark room. You have to figure out what you want to do. And then based on what you want to do, then you figure out all the process. So there's a few needed steps to go through before you venture out and just become this, It's almost like you want to do a soft launch in your friend circle and start saying, hey guys, this is what's going on. And you start sort of justifying it and hearing people's responses. And that way you'll be able to better respond to it. Like, hey, how much do you charge, Dave? Right? Like, you want to be able to have a quick response to that. Think of it like what the inside of a watch looks like? It's got all those wheels and cogs and stuff like that. There's one big wheel in there, right? And that one big wheel, you know what I mean? Like with the little cogs on it. That one big wheel is responsible for moving all the other parts, right? So if you focus on the little wheel and you try to spin it, it's really hard to spin that to get the big one to. You're better off focusing on the big wheel, saying, hey, I'm going to move this because when I move this, as a function of moving this, all the other pieces in my holistic system that I designed in my dark room are all going to move sort of concurrently. That's actually what I do. I help people sort of build, and when I do it, so I'll give you an example of 3 sessions that I've done. One in Boston, one in New York City, and one here in Buffalo, right? I start off with a 2-day boot camp, and it doesn't have to be that way, but I start off with a 2-day boot camp, which is basically that dark room, right? And I give you the pre-work that you have to do in the dark room, and then we do a 2-day boot camp where we're building your marketing message, your property management company, all the systems. Basically, every single system that you want to do, we're going to build it. Like from the way you move a tenant in, the way you sign a management contract, the way you engage a tenant, engage an owner, the way you, the systems, the process checklist, we build it from ground up. I have some solutions for that. Like, that's completely game changing. That will build the way your revenue stream based on something else that's not just, I charge a function of a percentage of gross collected rent. It's a completely different model, And I'll clue you into what it is so you can start thinking about it. It's based on NOI, right? So this is where you are true to the word of being, hey, I'm a realtor for the investor. Right? And your messaging could be, I'm a real estate agent for the investor, because when I manage your property, I don't just manage it like every other property manager where I'm just charging you, gross collected rent, and I love to do maintenance and make it this huge markup on maintenance and huge markup on leasing and all that, right? Where I nickel and dime you and everything. I participate in your success and I charge you as a function of the NOI net operating income, right? Now people are like, holy geez, that's kind of unique because most people just nickel and dime me for everything, right? So it's just a way, it's a different way to sort of USP yourself. Oh, awesome, man. Glad to have helped. I can talk about this stuff all day long, man. It excites me. So definitely glad to have helped. I appreciate your... Okay, you take care, man. Have a great weekend.